Modern Hollywood and academia love to portray Thomas Jefferson as a villain. They love to call him a hypocrite. They want to cancel the third president. They want to pull down his statues because they're looking at the software without reading the source code. What if I told you the man they call a slaveholder was actually the man who fired the first shot in the global war against human trafficking? Jefferson didn't just set the stage for the end of slavery in America. He architected the collapse of the institution across the entire world. Today, we strip away the hysteria and look at the real legal record. We look at the 27-year-old lawyer who risked his reputation to represent a mixed-race man and runaway slaves in court for zero profit. We look at the president who declared war on the first international terrorists specifically to end the enslavement of his own citizens. This is the unauthorized biography of Thomas Jefferson. It's time to look at the facts. The manufactured hysteria. Before we dive in, we have to ask, why did the world suddenly decide he was a villain? For nearly 2 centuries, Jefferson was a universal icon of human liberty. In 1962, John F. Kennedy famously said that even a room full of Nobel Prize winners couldn't match the talent of Thomas Jefferson dining alone. In 1989, the heroic protesters in Tiananmen Square weren't quoting Marx, they were quoting Jefferson. They built a goddess of democracy statue and carried banners with his words because he was their symbol for breaking a tyrannical system. So what changed? In the 1960s, a radical shift occurred in American academia. Anti-American historians, many with Marxist roots, began a project to rewrite the American story. As Glenn Beck has noted, if you want to erase a people's constitutional rights, you first have to destroy the men who wrote them. They want you to believe the foundation is rotten, so they can justify tearing the house down. The legal warrior. In 1769, as a 26-year-old freshman legislator, Jefferson co-sponsored a bill to allow owners to free their slaves without state permission. Here is the fact that most people, and most textbooks, conveniently ignore. In the 18th century, you couldn't just set a slave free on a whim. The law of Virginia at the time required you to get a special permit or an act of the state legislature just to release one person. Jefferson's bill was the first step toward ending slavery in Virginia by removing the state's veto power over human liberty. He was branded a radical for it, and the bill was crushed. A year later, he acted as a pro bono lawyer for Samuel Howell, a mixed-race man suing for his freedom. Jefferson bypassed technicalities and told the court, "Under the law of nature, all men are born free." He provided counsel for runaways and those seeking freedom for no fee, while his peers were getting rich off the plantation system. The judges, wealthy slaveholders, were so terrified of his logic that they cut him off and ruled against his client before he could finish. The 1807 Act, the preemptive strike. The hysteria narrative says he talked a big game but did nothing. But Jefferson treated the Constitution's Article 1, Section 9, which protected the slave trade until 1808, like a tactical countdown. He knew that if he didn't act early, the slaveholding states would lobby to delay or even renew the trade indefinitely. He didn't wait for the deadline to start the debate. He pushed the act through in early 1807 to lock it in before the opposition could organize. On March 2, 1807, he signed the act prohibiting importation of slaves. He timed it so the law would take effect on January 1, 1808, the literal first second allowed by the Constitution. He beat the British Abolition Act by 23 days. By signing this, he officially categorized the international slave trade as piracy. This wasn't just an American law, it was the first major legal hammer to strike the global slave trade, cutting off the supply line for the entire world. The inheritance trap. If he hated slavery, Why didn't he just free them? In 1773, Jefferson inherited 135 people from his father-in-law. On top of that, they came with a debt of roughly $13,300, about $1.2 million today. Under Virginia law, enslaved people were collateral for debt. British creditors held liens on his property. Legally, he could not free them because they did not belong to him. They belonged to the creditors. If he had tried to set them all free, the law would have seized those individuals and sold them to the highest bidder to settle the debt. Jefferson was land poor, a millionaire on paper with no cash, trapped in a legal cage. The Sally Hemings debate. The reality check. This is the hysteria headquarters for modern academia. The 1998 DNA study is often presented as proof of an affair, but that's a lie by omission. The test only proved that a Jefferson male fathered Sally Hemings' son Eston. It didn't find Thomas. It found a family bloodline shared by at least 25 to 30 adult male Jeffersons in Virginia at the time. If you look at the broader tree, there were as many as 65 people in the area who could have been a match. Let's look at the actual biological odds. At the time of Eston's conception, Thomas Jefferson was 64 years old. This was 200 years before Viagra. While Thomas was an aging widower living a life of rigid self-discipline, his younger brother Randolph was a very different character. Political commentators like Ann Coulter have pointed out that Randolph was known for fiddling and spending his nights dancing and socializing with the enslaved population at Monticello. He was a younger, more active man who treated the plantation like a social club. Records show Randolph was at Monticello around the time of Eston's conception. Modern hysteria only reports the theory that fits the hypocrite narrative. We prefer the facts. The Barbary Wars. This is where the quiet philosopher became a lion. Jefferson didn't just put America on the path to ending slavery at home. He fought it abroad. For years, North African pirates had been kidnapping and enslaving American citizens. Europe was paying tribute, protection money. 20% of our entire national budget went to these bribes. In 1801, when the Pasha of Tripoli demanded more, the soft-spoken intellectual didn't send a check. He sent the Navy. He lived the slogan, millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute. The mission was a resounding success. By 1805, the Pasha was forced to sign a treaty on American terms. The U.S. was the first nation in history to stop the tribute payments that had plagued the world for centuries. This gained America the shocked admiration of all of Europe. Pope Pius VII famously remarked that the United States had done more for Christianity against the pirates than all the most powerful nations of Europe combined. It was a bold move that shocked the world and proved that beneath the quiet philosopher was a man of unyielding iron. The Resolution. Thomas Jefferson represented the best of the American character, wrestling with limitations that were entirely beyond his control. He was an architect of liberty who was legally bound by debt and trapped by the laws of his time. But he didn't just complain. He used the law to fight the law. He wrote the source code for human freedom and signed the laws that killed the international slave trade. He was a man of the pen, but as Benjamin Rush said, he had a political backbone like an iron pillar. Thomas Jefferson didn't give us a perfect country. He gave us the tools to make it perfect. And that is a fact worth defending.